Hi.
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 Hello.
I'm curious about
Building open, authentic, loving relationship.
I'm curious about jealousy.
I'm curious about polyamory.
Does it just mean that you're fucking all the time?
How can I tell my parents that my partner is already married?
I'm curious about
How do you know when you're too busy to have another relationship?
I'm curious about dominant and subordinate relationships.
I'm curious about sexual health.
How can relationships evolve with people as they grow and change?
Magnets make a really good fidget toy because you can do that thing when you put the same sides against each other and you make them push, and it feels like there is a sweet spot where they will just like keep steady. But it's so slim. It's so hard to find. You can just like totally spend hours trying to balance magnets, you know? And I think that is a good metaphor for trying to balance that safety, stability, and passion and variety.
Welcome to the Curious Fox podcast for those challenging the status quo in love, sex, and relationships. My name is Jacqueline Misla. Lately, I've been having this feeling of restlessness. We've finally had a string of sunny days, and my daughter shared that on one particularly warm day, her class poured out into the yard for recess, and feeling the warmth of the sun on their faces, they peeled off their jackets, threw them on the ground, and ran around the yard shouting, "I'm free, I'm free." And that is how I feel. I want to peel everything off, my responsibilities, my obligations, my work meetings and deadlines and dishes and dinner. My God, dinner. Every single night, it's time for me to cook dinner again when I just cooked dinner the day before. I want to peel it all off and run and shout, "I'm free, I'm free." And as I was reflecting on this the other day, I started to get this feeling of deja vu, this strong sensation that I have felt this way before. So I went to the Curious Fox podcast and started scrolling through the old episodes, as I'm sure you do when you're trying to find the answer to a problem. And there it was, a conversation between Effy and I from July 2021 called Roots and Wings. So I listened to the episode and took notes, again, as I'm sure that you do when you're trying to get to the bottom of something. And I was amused to discover that I did in fact feel exactly like this 2 years ago. And indeed, according to the episode and 2021 me, I seem to feel this way just about every 2 years. Antsy and craving change, craving room to breathe and lightness and space to be creative and fun and passion and lust and adventure and freedom. Apparently, I have a bit of a pattern of feeling settled and then feeling antsy. Antsy to let go of all of the things that are keeping me grounded and just break free until, inevitably, I get resituated and reground myself in all of the things in my life, my daughter and partners and work and obligations, until I feel antsy and want freedom and wash and repeat over and over every couple of years. But before I throw everything to the side and just buy a one-way ticket to Greece, which I have truly considered, I've decided to heed the advice of, well, myself from 2021. It was as if I was speaking to my future self, giving me the roadmap for how to deal with this unease. And because I imagine that many of you may also be feeling the desire to just throw down your coat and work emails and grocery lists to the ground and proclaim your freedom and run towards the warmth of the sun, I thought that I would share this advice with you as well. So here it is. My conversation with Effy, my deep desire for roots and wings, and my color-coded bullet points for how to deal with my biannual restlessness. The conversation starts with me simply answering the question, how are you doing? Enjoy. I'm good. Relationships are good. Work is good. Daughter is good. All the things are good. And I'm feeling a little antsy.
Everything is a little too good, I hear.
Sigh. Yes. I mean, okay. So what happens for me is sometimes when I'm all is well and settled, then I start to feel confined. almost like when, I don't know if this happens to you, when like if I'm in the library and it's too quiet, then I just start to imagine like what would it be like to just start yelling. Or if I'm if I'm in a meeting and everyone's being like uber professional, then I just like visualize and daydream about like standing on the table and just like cursing everyone out and just like, does your brain do that?
I mean, yes, I tend to just want to disrupt the situations as well, but I tame that part of my brain. But I totally get it.
Right, exactly. No, I don't do those things.
Yeah.
Right, but that's the feeling. That feeling when like things are too calm or settled, then I start to feel restless. And at some point, I wondered if this was like a method of self-sabotage. If I was either intentionally or unintentionally disrupting things in order to cause trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But now I have a new theory.
Oh, do tell. I love theories.
So, okay. Have you ever been in bed with a partner and you're cozying up for the evening and maybe you're going to go to sleep and you like intertwine your legs and one leg is through the other and you just like feel like cozy with each other and like comfortable. And then at some point you like are like getting close to sleep, but you realize you can't sleep like this. Like you can't sleep with your legs all intertwined with each other. And so now you start to feel like, okay, I want to move. Like I want to roll over. And you start to think, well, I don't want to move my legs because it looks like they're comfortable in sleeping and I don't want to wake them up. And so you like sit in it for a little bit, but then as the pressure starts like building inside of you and you're like, I need to move. I need to get out. And then finally you're just like, boom. And you like get your leg out as quickly as you can. And you roll over to like the cool side of the bed. And you're just like,
yeah,
that feels better. Does that make sense? Has that happened to you?
Yes. I think the biggest difference is that for a very small person, you and I are both small people, I revel in a king-size bed. So that I can have all the space in the world to just roll about.
Yes.
And like maybe like what I like is like my toes touching. Like I like the toes touching. Like cuddle period is great. And then like listen, no hard feelings. Like, you know, we have a lot of bed. Let's find our own patches and like touch toes. Like that is how I like to roll. But I totally understand that moment when you are all tangled up. That actually does happen to me at the beginning of relationships when you're like, oh my God, I want to feel every inch of your skin on every inch of my...
And it feels perfect. And you're like, this feels cozy and wonderful. And I just want to like fall asleep in your arms. But then actually, I don't want to sleep like this because a little while later, I just feel desperate to like roll away. And then when I do, I feel tremendous relief. That is what it feels like. It is that like push and pull, that desire for comfort and closeness. And then that desire for like freedom and relief and excitement. And so that like literally that happened to me. And when it did, it clicked. I was like, oh, I'm not self-sabotaging. Like this is normal. This push pull of like closeness, distance. Like that's normal.
Totally. This makes me think of Freud's The Hedgehog Dilemma, which essentially a metaphor he uses for the struggle of the human and the human intimacy. It describes a situation in which a group of hedgehogs seek to move closer to one another to share heat during a cold winter, but they must remain apart so they don't hurt each other with their sharp spines. And when I think about it, it makes me so sad. I think of these like cute hedgehogs, cold in the winter. All they want to do is get close, huddle up, be warm, but they can't. They just can't get close because they will hurt each other. Just makes me so sad. And when I hear that, that's exactly what I think.
Yeah, that metaphor immediately like people came to mind. Like specific people in my life came to mind where I'm like, oh, you're a hedgehog. I understand now. But yeah, that's it. That push and pull is what I felt. And actually, for years, I've had this motto, which I think really, and this mantra that fits into this, which is roots and wings. And I've used this expression forever. Honestly, I would love to get a tattoo of it. I do not have any tattoos. I would love that to be the first. So if anyone out there is a tattoo artist and you would like to submit your designs for Roots and Wings, I am accepting admissions. But I love that because it captures the two things that I am craving, which are stability and freedom.
Here.
So my default setting, I think, is stability. Like my default setting is to like intertwine my legs. And eventually that desire though for freedom like breaks through.
And it takes shape like in all areas of my life, right? I could suggest to my daughter, for example, that we spend the day together, that we play games, that we do crafts, that we watch movies, all just inspired by my desire to be close to her. But then 2 hours in, you're going to find me in the bathroom and I'm scrolling through social media or listening to a podcast or writing a work email because I need a break from that closeness. Now, luckily, it turns out my daughter is the same way. So we've learned to build in connection breaks together because at one point or the other, we both like escape. But it's like that. Or at work, I will be seeking out as a consultant, like a long-term project with a retainer so that I can have stability in my schedule, stability in my bank account. However, a few months into the rhythm of Zoom calls and daily emails, and then I start to daydream about walking away from all of it and going back to multiple projects at a time, which, by the way, when I was doing that, I was longing for stability in my paycheck and in my calendar. And then, of course, in my relationships, I think my relationships historically have taken the brunt of my desire for freedom the worst. Like that is the place where I have wreaked the most havoc.
That totally resonates with me. I guess I almost am the opposite of that. My default are wings. I think sometimes I find myself with gloriously large wings that help me soar to the highest of heights. And I think I'm, thriving and soaring. And then I realize I'm missing roots. Like I don't know where to land. And when I do, it's not like a thriving stability. It's like inertia or dullness or boredom that even though I might be landing and should be grounded, that I'm not really grounded as kind of this temporary just landing pad. Like I've sort of landed in a desert. I just need to take a breath and then I, take off again. And I think, right now I feel like I'm going through one of those stages. I have nothing to anchor me. I make my own schedule. I can work from anywhere. I can take on projects that really excite me and really nothing else. And, I'm soaring. I know that I'm going to be at some point, I'm going to be like, wait, hold on. Like, where do I land? Where are my roots? Like, where's my community? Where are my peeps? Where are my lovers? So I get it. I get it.
Yeah. It's funny listening to you say that. It makes me think of the expression that you say of how you are in one place is how you are everywhere. Am I saying that right?
How you do anything is how you do everything.
Yes. Because if you have listened to our infidelity episodes, we have just literally described the way that we showed up in those situations where I was like bolting everything to the ground and you were setting everything on fire and flying free. So yeah.
Here we are.
Well, so this is all right. So the trouble is because I default to stability that, eventually my desire for rebellion has been disruptive for me and for those around me. So for example, in my relationship, I have kind of painted myself into a bit of a corner in that I was in a steady relationship, right? I was married, steady, after the infidelity stuff, like all good. And then I started to date other people with the desire to find adventure. Just like Esther Perel calls it, like looking for waves to complement my anchor. And of course, in a very lesbian U-Haul kind of way, I jumped into another serious relationship. And so now I have 2 serious, steady partners and I have no French love affairs. I have no adventure. I know. And in the past, when I was feeling antsy, I would feel inclined to hit the areas of my life like a tornado, like whip everything around. And honestly, and most commonly, I would have put the burden of that change, that excitement, that venture, those wings onto my relationships. So seemingly out of nowhere, I would announce to my partner that we don't go out enough. And they don't say that I'm sexy enough and we don't flirt enough and we don't long for each other enough. And this was a pattern actually that my wife identified a few years ago because I was sharing with her that I felt like I was suffocating and I needed to do something. And she was just listening, kind of like unaffected. And when I asked her, I was like, aren't you curious? Aren't you concerned? Aren't you as riled up as I am? And she was like, no, you say the same thing about every 2 years. About every 2 years, you make the same declaration. And she's like, and I've just learned to like ride out the tornado until it passes.
That's so funny. Yeah, that's so funny. I hear you and I know you, right? And we've talked about this stuff so often. I can also tell you that you're not alone. Like I hear this from so many people. I hear this.
There are tornadoes landing all around the world.
Exactly. Tornado touchdowns. No, this comes up in relationships all the time. In fact, I would say this way of feeling is one of the sort of top reasons why people bring up opening up relationships. It seems like the answer. Like they feel a certain way. They think it's their relationship that's causing it. And they feel like the only way they can get away from it is to make a huge relationship change. And of course, open relationships have been as a part of the zeitgeist recently, and everyone's talking about it. It's now mainstream. So more and more people are like, you know what? Let's open a relationship. And I can tell you, it really is not the answer. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But if you're feeling that way, there are many things you can do. Yes, you can explore an open relationship. My professional guess is that it's not really gonna answer your calling or answer the antsiness is what you called it, the antsiness that you're feeling. It's not happening outside of you. It's happening inside of you.
Yeah. I remember we did a live event a few years ago. I think this even was before I was a part of Curious Fox. I think I was just a Fox at that time, and I was sitting in the audience, and Dr. Eli Sheff was leading a workshop. And I think it was about the mono-poly mismatch and like how to make those relationships work. And in that conversation, she shared this analogy that has stuck with me forever. She said, imagine you have a pool with a large crack in it. No matter how much water you pour into that pool, it will never remain full because it's going to continue to leak through that crack. And she's like, and so if you have something in you that is unresolved, as much love as you try to pour into yourself from as many people and that you have around you, that is going to continue just to like leak out until you heal that piece inside of you. And I think that's what I hear you saying is you can open up and have all of the people. But if that restlessness is inside of you, none of those people are going to resolve that for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I find, again, I've heard this pattern, different stories. And this is why I love my job. I get to hear all these different stories. And ultimately, I really end up noticing a handful of patterns that people are going through. And I definitely, this roots and wings, I love that terminology that you've introduced me to, happens so often. I find that there are a few reasons why it happens, actually. And this is my theory. To add to your theory, I have a theory on why this happens. I think we slowly get disconnected from ourselves and spend more and more time in our doing minds rather than in our being minds, and more importantly, in our bodies. Yeah. We get caught up in day to day. We get caught up in other people's needs. We got caught up in our stories, just getting through the day, and we get disconnected. So we don't get a feedback loop of like, it's getting warmer slowly. It's just like, we don't listen to it ourselves. We don't hear ourselves. We miss the signs that allow us to make small adjustments along the way, rather like maybe like stick out an arm out of the sheets and keep that cool, maybe have thinner sheets, right? Make small adjustments. Don't wait to the last minute when you're like, I can't deal with this anymore.
I roll them off the bed. I'm like,
exactly.
Go sleep in the living room. I can't take it.
Exactly. You're like shoving them off the bed. And they're like, what? We're cuddling, It's because you're just like disconnected and you're not listening to yourself,
That's so true.
Right? Is one of the reasons. Also, we did big picture stuff, right? We lose sight of our purpose, our vision for our lives, our intentions. We just get caught up in putting one foot in front of the other, which is great from getting A to B, right? It's great. And we talk about this. In the worst of days, you just put one foot in front of the other and get to the end of the day. It'll get you from A to B. However, if B is not where you want to be, then why are we putting one step in front of the other, right? We've lost purpose of what B is. Maybe we want to course correct and go towards C or Z. But it's just that we lost sight of our purpose, our vision, all the beautiful things that keep us going towards thriving, right? Rather than just doing. I think that's another reason people find themselves like trapped in the way that you're describing.
Yeah, that completely resonates because I think that's true. I think that it will happen. It's almost like to your point, like I get robotic, I'm in the thing, I'm doing the next thing. And then something deep inside, like maybe that inner child that wants to play, that part of myself that has always longed for some adventure and some freedom. And frankly, had that like squashed out of me for the first, few decades of my life. Like that part like reemerges and like bursts through because that's the only way that they knew how to like get my attention was just like start screaming. And to your point, I am sure that there were little things along the way that were little signs that I was ignoring until finally I just felt like I could not breathe. And then boom, the tornado hit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in your case, again, because I know you and I know how you show up in the world, though I'm always open to you changing and evolving, Jacqueline. I just want to tell you. I know you, but I remain curious, my friend. I just want to tell you that. But from what I know of you thus far, I also know how much of an ethical life you lead, right? That you are, responsible, that you want to show up for everyone, that your commitments are important to you. And so you kind of get into a place of like, well, I have a schedule. I promised that I'm going to be with these people on these days and these people on these days. I'm going to coordinate these people. And you're a master coordinator of pretty much everything. Your life, other people's lives, Curious Fox, And I think as a part of that master coordination, you assign yourself certain parts, and because you have integrity and you are ethical and you care about other people and you're proud of your work, you show up. And I think sometimes that showing up is just you getting to from A to B, that one foot in front of another, and not giving yourself enough of a pause to question, like, actually, maybe we need to readjust some of this stuff. Maybe I don't need to go back and forth in the same schedule. That I might just have to tell people, actually, I need to take some time. We might have to like disrupt the pattern and do things. I think maybe that also plays a part.
No, and I almost want to just take a breath and a break there, because that is absolutely speaking to somebody right now who is listening to this, that you have systematically given pieces of yourself away just by showing up for people with integrity. To your point, there are, myself included, the caregivers of the world that, the other day, people often ask about how do I manage all of the things in my life, right? The 4 jobs, 3 houses, the 2 partners and the kid. And a lot of it is scheduling. And there are 2 times of year where my regular schedule gets completely disrupted. That is over the summer and that is through the holidays. So twice a year, I have to sit down for a several hour process where I look at where my daughter is going to be, whose house she's going to be, because is she going to be in camp? Is she going to be on traveling? She's seeing her grandparent, whatever that looks like. Where am I going to be? Am I going to be at the beach? Am I be here? Okay, where am I going to spend time with this partner, with my wife, and it's like I have a piece of paper in front of me and I'm just like moving little pieces around into little boxes. And essentially what I'm doing is just giving away my time. I'm here for work. I'm here for her. I'm here for her. I'm here for you. I'm here for, and I'm doing that willingly, right? These are things, people that are important to me and things that are important to me. But when I look at that, it is exactly what you're describing of just like giving myself away to the point of being overly structured. And after a while, that builds up resentment. When you feel like you're giving more time or energy than the folks around you, or where you have given all of yourself away and there's nothing left at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally understand that. And I observe it with you and other people in my life. It's not just you. And I know, like you said, there are listeners out there right now going, oh my God, me too. And take comfort, friends, Foxy followers, that you are not alone. Jacqueline is there right with you doing the same thing. I think it is out of integrity. It's out of love. I think that it happens slowly and you end up in a place where you're feeling resentful, like you said, and disconnected and spread too thin. Totally happens.
I think the other thing, and Esther Perel talks about this in her book, Meeting Captivity, that when you have those things like rules and structure and systems, like that's not where the dirty sexy lives, right? Like the like lustful, passionate, spontaneous, like the yummy does not live in the same place necessarily as the comfortable and the predictable and the stable. And so it's hard when we, as human beings, are longing and craving for those things, for both those things, and how they are almost absolutely opposed, like magnets, opposite side magnets to each other, and they just like repel each other away.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's, I think it's a lifelong quest to find that balance, to find that sweet spot. And when it's funny you talk about magnets. I was playing with magnets earlier today as a part of a constructing project, random. Magnets are a great fidgeting toy, by the way, if anybody needs them. I'm definitely one of those people who need fidget toys. Magnets make a really good fidget toy because you can do that thing when you put the same sides against each other and you make them push, and it feels like there is a sweet spot where they will just like keep steady, but it's so slim. It's so hard to find. You can just like totally spend hours trying to balance magnets, and I think that is a good metaphor for trying to balance that safety, stability, and passion and variety. So funny you should talk about magnets.
Yeah.
What else causes this? There are other things I think causes this. We are, as humans, super adaptable creatures. That is why we live in all corners of this beautiful planet with so much different living conditions. We can do it. It's great for the survival of our species. However, we sometimes adapt to our situations a bit too much. We adapt to an extent that we stop questioning our status quo. We forget to challenge it. And I don't mean challenge it in a way that we challenge it at Curious Fox, or a little aggressively, but really keep questioning, keep being present. But like, is my status quo still what I want? Is this still working for me? Am I thriving? And it's just that staying present with it and adjusting it and course correcting or reveling in its beauty and its harmony, right? It's that being present piece that we kind of just adapted, and we're just, flowing, and not in a good way.
Yeah.
I find another reason why people get to that trapped place and kind of feel like they have to unleash themselves from themselves, that there is unresolved trauma that continues to have an impact on their sense of safety and stability, and that no amount of safety or stability is enough, and they don't deal with it, they don't know how to deal with it, and they double down on external factors that makes them feel safety and stability. And of course, we know that that kind of safety and stability doesn't come from external factors. It might for a little bit, but eventually it's going to be ineffective. Going back to the pool analogy that we talked about, that the more we seek safety and stability from the outside and we double down on that in relationships, the more we are going to move away from that balance, that sweet spot of the magnets, where there's going to be passion and excitement as well as safety and stability.
Yeah. Yeah. We should bookmark this and talk about this, explore this in a future episode, because I think folks like you and myself and others who had some challenges in our childhood and who became uber aware of paying attention to people and paying attention to when there was calmness and the moments right before a storm, that for me, at least, when there is calmness, I am constantly paying attention to, this is not going to last. Something's going to happen, right? And like looking for those signs. And so, yeah, we need to explore that more at some point.
We will. I definitely have intentions of exploring more of trauma and how it affects our relationships. In fact, we have an episode coming up where we're going to be talking to the author of Polysecure, Jessica Fern, where she actually talks about trauma and attachment, in intersection of trauma and attachment and polyamory. So that's going to be really interesting.
If you want to read the book before we do that episode so that you know what we are talking about, then you can go onto our website at curiousfox.com/reading list, and you'll find the book there.
And so many more books that we recommend. So go and check it out. Last, but absolutely not the least, one of the main reasons why I think we feel we're trapped in a relationship, or we feel trapped in any situation, is that we have lost sight of our boundaries, that we have abandoned ourselves and our own boundaries. And by the time we come around, we are in places where we don't want to be. And I think boundaries are so important. And we'll talk about it. We have talked about it in the podcast, and we will keep talking about this. I would say one of the even though we're mentioning this last, I would say one of the top reasons why people get that is because they've lost sight of their boundaries.
Yeah, all of those things. Check. All of those things are me. Let me say, I am at least older and wiser now, with the tornado scars to prove it. And so when I'm feeling antsy and when I'm craving wings, I don't have to spiral out and stir up everything in my path.
Burn it all down.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, I've learned and applied, I think, 3 strategies that have helped me name and act on the feeling without allowing it to like unravel all the important things in my life.
I love that you just like look at it and you're like, I'm going to extract 3 strategies. I'm going to name them. I'm going to break them down. And it's like, so like, I'm going to Jackie the shit out of these. I love it. Do share. I can't wait. Tell me your strategies.
I was going to say, I mean, if you're going to go through pain, you got to then at least result it in a list. I need a checklist of actions.
Exactly. You need at least some chart paper, some colored pens, and some bullet points.
Yes.
Otherwise, why are we living, honestly?
I love bullet points. Okay, yes. Bullet point number 1.
Yes, go for it.
The first thing that I've learned is pay attention to my body. And you mentioned this before, and it seems obvious because I'm in my body. But exactly as you said before, I just like check out for my body. And now I can sense when I'm starting to get that claustrophobic feeling. I know that it's a tightness in my chest. It's like this antsy feeling in my feet. I like start to like clutch and unclutch my hands. I do these like quick inhales and long exhales. It's like,
sighs.
Yes. And so in the past, when I felt that way, I would either label it as anxiety and like ignore it, or I would intentionally write it out and be like, okay, I'm feeling uncomfortable, but just like push through.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny you should say that because we do pathologize that feeling. We, instead of, the fact that you're saying you would label it anxiety, exactly. We just pathologize it, often get medication for it. But you're doing something completely different with it. You are actually learning from it.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I saw a meme once that said, whenever like I go through something, first I'm like, wait, is it the moons? Is it my period? Is it anxiety? Is it trauma? Like there's a whole like checklist go through. And then at some point you can be like, no, just this is how I feel right now. But yeah, so as soon as now I acknowledge it, I feel it in my body, as opposed to ignoring it, I may go for a run or take a walk alone or go dancing in the living room, just something that like moves my body in a solo activity so that I can address like the physical sensation of the claustrophobia without allowing that feeling to impact then my decisions and my behavior.
I love that. And it makes so much sense and it resonates with me. And I hope everyone's listening is taking note because that connection with the body is so important. I've shared before, I have a practice that I love called 5 Rhythms. It's a movement meditation practice. And I know when I don't do it, it looks like dancing. It's essentially dancing. It's just you set an intention for it and you move through certain feelings through dance. And I know that when I don't do that for a while, I get disconnected and I feel it in every area of my life. And that connection is so important. Some generalized tips for everyone. The 3 pillars, I think, of connecting to yourself and really getting down with your self-care are movement, meditation, and journaling. They seem so basic. They seem so boring. Yet they are your basic pillars. Movement, whatever movement feels good for you. Is it like Jackie, are you a runner? Like me, are you a dancer? Are you a gym rat? Do you love CrossFit? And if you do, who are you? Who loves CrossFit? Just kidding. No judgment.
No, we're just in awe.
We're just in awe. Yeah, true story. Is it yoga? Is it trampolining? Is it silks? Whatever is it? Find your movement. Find a movement that speaks to you and have it as a part of your life. Practice it. Meditation. I resisted meditation for such a long time. Then I got sucked into it. And now I'm like, why aren't we teaching it at school? Which I think like schools are actually now teaching it to kids. all the things people say about meditation are true. Meditation is medicine. The things that I think put people off and that put me off is that I had this idea that I had to have this like hippie woo-woo attitude towards meditation, that I needed a meditation corner, that I was supposed to like look a certain way, feel a certain way, dress a certain way. None of those things are true. The beginning, you just sit your ass down and you watch your breathing. That is all it is. It just seems so simple. You think like, how can this be so effective? It is effective. So just sit your ass down, start with the 5 minutes, see if you can work up to 20 minutes. And then if you want to get to ninja level, 20 minutes twice a day, which again, who are you?
I know, that's incredible. Because all those things, the first point of that is that it's a disruption. You're noticing, ooh, I'm starting to feel tight. I'm starting to feel claustrophobic. I'm starting to feel longing. I'm starting to feel whatever that thing is. I'm not going to put a label on it and ignore it. I'm going to allow myself to recognize this is what I'm feeling, and I'm going to move or write or breathe or do something that allows me to get unstuck from this moment or to push it down, because then that will have impact. It will bubble up or it will leak out.
So, by the way, all these strategies, all these tools and skills are good for everyone. Those who want more roots, those who want more wings, those who want who have too much of one and then the other. These all work. It is about how do you restore balance? How do we restore and get ourselves into that sweet spot where we're thriving? That we are not craving more of the other thing or feeling overwhelmed by one thing.
Yeah, no, totally. Which actually leads us to bullet number 2. So the second thing that I learned is I have now gained a discipline of exploring what areas of my life are calling out for attention. I think before either A, making my poor partners pay the price for my sudden longing for adventure, or B, disrupting all the areas in my life and like turning over every table and dumping out every drawer in an attempt to find something that I have lost. I, instead of those things now, can take stock and pause and say, okay, what are the important areas of my life and how am I experiencing and feeling those things? My wife and I, some years ago, created this fuel gauge tool that I now use with my clients to figure out what areas of life need tending to. So imagine you're in a car and you know your fuel gauge and you can see how full or empty your gas tank is. And if you don't pay attention to it, at some point your car will run out of gas and you will be stalled. And in the same way, if we don't pay attention to the areas in our life that feel like there are gaps, that feel empty, that don't feel full, that will have consequence. We will feel stalled. And so literally I created a document that has like these little fuel gauges in it. And I'll link the tool in our show notes. And then you just write down under it, like, okay, relationships, work, my health, my spirituality, my parenting, whatever those things are. And then I'm thinking, okay, how do I feel right now? In terms of how filled do I feel in my work right now? How filled do I feel in my relationships? How full and if I feel full, that's where the measurement goes. And I'm like, great. If I'm starting to feel empty, the more empty I am, then I note that too. And then I can pinpoint like, oh, this is not a relationship problem. This is a work problem. Like I don't feel validated at work. And so as a result of that, I am pressuring my partners to like pay attention to me and to validate how amazing I am. Like, oh, I see what I'm doing there. So I use this tool whenever I need to. And then, I've gotten to the discipline of doing it at least once a year with my wife, where we each do it and then we share the results with each other so that we know how to support each other and how to hold each other accountable. And just, it gives a place for conversation around those important areas.
I love that. And it's such a good tool. I know that we used a version of it for the Relationship by Design, Know Thyself part. So it's a great tool. Also, I would recommend that could also just be a part of your journaling. If you just printed off these sheets and every day, just as a part of your journaling, at the end of your journaling, 5 minutes, just mark the fuel gauge. Where am I today? And that I think is a really good way to like keep record as well, like day to day, and see your overall patterns and see what correlations there are, like if your career do you find that when your career is really going well, that it's actually impacting everywhere else, or that you kind of compartmentalize things maybe, there's so much insight and there's so much learning to be done with some structured reflection that Jackie is recommending. And the fuel gauge is just like a really practical wonderful, great, beautiful way to do that. So do it, folks, do it. And also, I think the important piece, which what you're talking about, Jackie, is the way that you approach it with your partner. So partners, that we often talk about doing regular check-ins, right? And often what is understood from that are state of the union, let's reflect on the relationships type of, and let's figure out what's not going well, and let's fix it and learn from it, all that kind of stuff. So
very serious.
Very serious. And I think it's important that that is a practice. On top of that, I think if you're being really good with these and if you want to make the most of that time, I think also approaching them and coming with what's going on with you as an individual, which what you're saying, like I do my fuel gauge, my partner, my wife does her fuel gauge, and we come together and we tell each other as individuals what's going on with us. That isn't anything to do with the relationship. That isn't anything to do with each other. But you, Jackie, what's going on? What's the latest? What are all the areas of your life happening? And that you individuate, that you really sort of show up for yourself and talk about yourself and hold space for your wife to do the same. So important, because this will help ease the enmeshment, right? Which most of us end up getting enmeshed with our partners. It's just how humans are made. But having these times where you are seeing them as individuals with what's going on with their life that has nothing to do with you, you will also realize that they are not the source of your woes or your joy, or you know, that they are their own person doing their own thing, dealing with their own shit and reveling their own joy. And hopefully you are collaborating on life on the areas that make sense to you. So add this individual input to your State of the Union conversations, and please make room, leave room for celebration of what's going right, and leave room for hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
That's where the wings are. That's where you don't get claustrophobic, that you align your vision with your partner, that you don't feel like you don't get claustrophobic, you don't get myopic, you don't only think about what to change, how to make things better, that you celebrate and you dream. Those are also super, super important.
Yeah. No, I think that's completely true. And those conversations has also surprised me, because there are times that she'll share something and I'm like, yeah, that's how you're feeling? Huh. Interesting. Or like, I thought you used to feel this way. Oh, you don't anymore? You've changed?
Whoa.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. That's so good. So you clear what I call clear cache as well. Like you clear cache, people change, people evolve, people get a new perspective on things, a paradigm shift. Life changes you, and approaching it in that way will allow you to clear that cache, that you don't just like go back to the version of themselves that you cached in your head and get bored by that person. You know, I maintain that when we're getting bored by our partners, it's because we've stopped seeing them. Yes. We just like refer back to a static image that we hold in our heads.
Yes. One of my hacks for that is I will ask questions about life before me. So I'll say, tell me about your ex-partner and tell me about when you came out. Tell me about when you were going to school. Tell me about your favorite party that you went to. Tell me something that is life before me, so that I like get this window into a person that I don't know. And then that re-engages my curiosity and that spark. And
Love that. What I'm hearing you say, Jackie, is be curious. What?
No, I would never. Yes.
Would that be the answer to all these things?
Yes.
Be curious, friends.
Yeah. So bullet number 3 was, I learned that instead of the tornado and the deep desire to like stir up everything, now I can just introduce little bits of change into the areas of my life. Almost like if you're turning up the volume slowly until you get to the right decimal, like that, as opposed to just like boom and turning it on. I like now gradual. And I'm like, okay, that's good. That feels good right there. I'm going to stop right there. Yeah.
I love that. And the thing is, you can really only do that if you getting the first 2 right, I reckon. Right? Because you're not going to be able to have that analog control over volume if you're not connected to yourself, and if you don't have a discipline of attending to the areas of your life, being intentionally attentive to the areas of your life. Once you master those, now you have that beautiful analog dial that you can control, that you can experiment with, that you can do slowly rather than like whacking something on and then like, oh, too much. And just like pulling the plug, which is,
which is what I was doing. For
Exactly. And I love that. You nail 1 and 2, and then 3 is freedom, then you get to choose the areas of your life that you want to change and shift and experiment with and grow into. So get to be the beanstalk.
Yes, the beanstalk. Yes. For folks who haven't heard, Effy and I have talked about change and how I used to see change like a lobster. Where a lobster fits itself between like 2 rocks, and when it feels like it is about to grow out of its shell, and it literally cracks its shell, and like its gooey innerness like crawls away and like hides beneath a rock until their new exoskeleton forms. And that's how I saw it change. It was like I start to feel too tight, and then I have to crack myself open, and my vulnerable gushiness comes out, and I have to like protect it until I harden up again. That was exactly how I defined change in my life.
Yes. And I took the poetic version of the phoenix that rises up and at some point bursts into flames and then rises anew from the ashes. And that it was my version of change, that I was this big, glorious, beautiful creature that, when it was time, when things didn't work out, that I would just set myself alight. And it felt brave. It felt courageous. It felt like I was doing something literally wonderful, as in like full of wonder, and that I would, and then like I would just be like, and then there'd be ashes, and I would just rise from the ashes, and just like shake things off, and here I am. And it just sounds so like when you talk about it like this, like initially you're like, wow, what a story!
So
the
powerful.
Lobster is amazing. The phoenix, such good analogies, and then you look back. They are so violent, so hard on yourself. Like you crack your shell open and you have to hide under a rock because it feels so scary. You're setting yourself on fire. What is wrong with you?
And okay, can I notice now? I'm seeing these observations everywhere.
Sure.
Of course, my analogy is at the sea floor, and your analogy is up flying in the air.
Ooh,
because I have like roots in your wings.
Wow,
What?
here we are. Yes, and those are our old selves, and we have evolved from that. And I'm sure our regular listeners will hear the story of when I reached out to Jackie. I was covered in soil, and I'd just been gardening. I had just moved to the Mediterranean, the coast of the Mediterranean, and I started living in these mandarin groves, and I was like planting things and growing things. And I had this like revelation, and I was like, I have to tell Jackie that plants also change. And they grow and they expand and they change and they thrive, and they do it peacefully, in harmony with nature. There's
without any
violence,
fire.
without any fires or cracking yourself open. I planted some beanstalks, and I was watching them. Beanstalks grow really fast, by the way. I really recommend. They're very satisfying. And the thing with a beanstalk is that you plant them and then you put a supporting structure near them, right? You can actually do crazy things, like you can plant them with a sunflower, which grows tall, and it kind of will wrap itself around. The very, very cool thing about beanstalk that it has roots and it wants to be in the sky. It will, with as long as it has roots and it gets nourished from the roots, it will grow. It wants to be in the sky. You put some support,
what an analogy.
right? And you put some support near it, and it will grow as far as you nourish it and you give it support, and it will rise and rise and rise as far as the support. I was like, that is how you grow. That is how you manage change. Friends, be the beanstalk.
Yes. So that is it. Right. So I used to crack myself open. I used to tornado the hell out of everything. Any violent analogy that you can think of, that's the thing I was doing. And then, now I try to use the volume, right? Just like and I talk about this in my change management work, just small acts of bravery to start to get some movement is often what you need. Just little things that you're like, okay, I'm going to try this thing. I'm going to try this thing. Specifically, for example, I am riding my bike more so I could feel the wind in my face and like literally feel freedom. My partner and I have started to spontaneously go out for like a drink and some calamari at this like restaurant that's near us, which is amazing. And so we do that every now and then. Like that feels like a little adventure. My wife and I have committed to going on one like New York City kind of adventure every month and exploring. We both grew up in New York, but exploring some part of New York that we haven't seen before. I'm saying yes now to my daughter when she invites me to dance in the rain. And so just like, what are some little things that I can say yes to and do that start to just raise the volume in different areas of my life without dramatic change?
Mm-hmm. And in addition to Jackie's beautifully structured and very, very valuable tips, just a few other ones to consider. Obviously, you need to figure out what works for you. Connecting with community. That is so important. If you're feeling you're trapped, if you're feeling that you're untethered, whatever way you're swinging too hard, connect with community, find people that are like-minded, that you feel in synergy with, and connect. And sometimes you feel you need to make a change, but you actually just need to connect more. So go out and do that, friends. And sometimes you just need to make a big change. Sometimes you just do. And that is okay. And it will be okay. And if you're going through a big change like that, you should just reach out to Jacqueline or follow her Instagram because that's what she does for a living. You want to deal with change? You deal with Jacqueline.
Well, it's funny because it's true in that I have been so resistant to change for so much of my life that, of course, the things that make me uncomfortable, I lean heavily into. I research the hell out of it. I focus on it. It's like, when you have a sore in your mouth and your tongue keeps pressing it over and over. Yes. That is how I built my career. Nice. And so, that is exactly right. Most of the work that I do is focused on that big change. I think that my great wish for all of us is that we can navigate through change and that we can find synergy between our roots and wings in a way that allows us to thrive. And we're curious. Do you crave either roots or wings? Have you found the right magnetic balance? Do you prefer your legs intertwined or do you want to lay untouched on your side of the bed? We would love for you to jump into the Curious Fox Facebook group and tell us, how do you find your roots and wings? What are you currently craving more of? Any resources that you have had, lessons that you have had, questions that you have had? The Curious Fox Facebook group is where we go to talk about the podcast. And so go and talk about your experience. Roots and wings. We're curious. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, then right now, in this moment, go onto the little app, whatever you're listening to, and press subscribe if you are an Apple Podcast, or follow on Spotify or Stitcher. And if you've done that already, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so appreciative. We're going to ask one more thing. It's only going to take you one more second. Just go to the place where there's stars or where there's ratings and just rate. The higher, the better. But you choose your own adventure. And while you're there, if you see the little arrow and you want to share it with somebody else, that's also cool. We're not going to be mad at that. So, subscribe, rate, share, all of that stuff really does help us to be able to change the noise and challenge the status quo. And if you like what you heard and you're like, I love that, and I want you to explore this thing, or I want you to hear my story, or I have a question, email us at listening@wearecuriousfoxes.com. Go onto our Patreon, and we have over 50 trainings and workshops and event videos and all of our podcast, bonus content and interview content. All of it is there. You can go binge on some videos, binge on some podcast extras, and support us on Patreon in the process. It's a win-win. And then lastly, if you want to learn more about us, Effy, myself, Curious Fox, you can find us on Instagram. We're hanging out on Instagram all the time. I'm always there. Jacqueline Misla. Effy is at Coach Effy Blue.
This episode is produced and edited by Nina Pollock, who grounds this podcast, which in turn allows us to soar. Our intro music is composed by Dave Saha. We are so grateful for their work, and we're grateful to you for listening. As always, stay curious, friends. Curious Fox Podcast is not and will never be the final word on any topic. We solely aim to encourage curiosity and provide a space for exploration through connection and story. We encourage you to listen with an open and curious mind, and we'll look forward to your feedback. Stay curious, friends.
Stay curious.
Stay curious.
Stay curious.
Stay curious.
Stay curious.
Stay curious.
Stay curious.